Hey everybody, I'm Curtis.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is Love at First Fright.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Yes,
Friends,
hello, welcome.
And enemies.
We're officially in the spooky season. I was going to say the reason for the season, but that's not.
No, we're officially in the season, and the reason for that season is... what is the reason for this season?
A bunch of pagans. Some kind of ritual.
I don't know. People being afraid of spirits.
Yeah. All the ghosts and goblins and ghouls coming out.
To play
and give you candy, I guess. Or pants you.
Yeah, or take your candy. That's probably the reason. Or, in today's age, to get candy and to dress a little slutty, if you're me.
Yeah. I feel like that was kind of always a thing, though. It's just, I guess it's like more like widely accepted, but I think it was always a thing.
No, definitely. But it should be a fun time. I am excited because this month is not only Halloween, which is my favorite holiday, but it's also my birthday. Yeah. And I've got a milestone this year because I'm turning 30. And to bring it in right, I am throwing a murder mystery party for my nearest and dearest. Yeah. And it should be so fun. We're all going to be dressed up like vampires.
Yeah, we've been planning this for a couple of months now.
Yeah.
You've gotten the kind of the gears turning on it.
Yes.
It's rapidly approaching. So
yes.
And I feel like maybe this is just us or me. I'll say me. Like, I feel like no matter how much I plan for things, when it gets like close enough to it, it always feels like I'm building the plane as I'm flying it.
Oh, for sure.
But like, it's not that we haven't prepared for it.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just like this event coming up and you're like, ah.
Yeah. It's also something, and I feel like normally, because my energy level has been so down the last several weeks, and so I don't have quite the capacity for all the planning details that I used to. So I honestly feel like if you look at my plan is step 1, 2 to 3 days before the party, go to a store, look around, buy something to eat that looks good. That's in the plan.
Yeah. But that's important though. Well, because you and I were talking about it, and I feel like if it's not, if you don't buy something to eat that looks good, then you're gonna spend half the time making stuff,
I'm gonna spend the whole weekend cooking food, and I already hate cooking.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
It's terrible. So anyway, that should be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're getting to play characters, which is fun. I've always wanted to do a murder mystery kind of a thing, and this will be my first time doing that.
Me too. It should be super fun.
I still need my character stuff because I know what character I'm playing, but I don't know everything about him. I can't remember.
Yeah, your character is Ivan T. Suckblood.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be like a mad scientist kind of guy, and I've been carefully crafting what he's gonna look like.
Yes.
So I landed on some things.
Yes.
So waiting for that to come in, and I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited about my outfit too. Get to dress up all vampy. Should be a good time. I'm really excited, and it's very cool to have a group of friends that are into it. Because that's kind of one of the reasons that I haven't done it in the past, is I feel like a murder mystery party could very easily not be fun if you have people that aren't willing to get a little weird with you, you know? Yeah. So, but
I've also obviously I've never done one, but I don't know how much of it is improv, how much of it is there's a kind of a script that I'm supposed to follow, and I don't think it's so much that. So
it's much not really a script.
There's a story beat.
Yeah, they kind of give you bullet points to hit.
Yeah, and then I'm just a guy in this kind of a thing, and so I think it would be not as fun if people just showed up and were not about it.
Right, like they're like
They
kind
were
of
just, like-
embarrassed or whatever.
Or like if they just like didn't do the character.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like everyone else is going to be doing it. So.
Right. But it should be cool. I'll let you know if I end up being the murderer.
I won't let you know if it was me.
You have to at the end.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, otherwise the police will catch me. I'm not doing that. You some kind of narc?
No police. We're vampires. We deal with this in-house.
Okay. Not the first time I've heard this.
Anyway.
Next thing you know, I'm wanted in 3 states.
Yeah. And 1 territory. Anyway.
We can go ahead and get into it.
Yes. It's spooky month.
Yeah,
and we got a spooky movie.
We watched Ginger Snaps.
Ginger Snaps.
Which is fun because I have never seen this movie.
And I love this movie.
Yeah. And I thought... So I knew that it was about werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the name Ginger Snaps was referring to multiple people known as like
the Ginger Snaps. Yeah.
And they're all werewolves and they go on like a rampage or something like
yes.
that. Little did I know that the movie is about a pair of sisters.
Yes.
One of them being
a teenage
Ginger,
girl.
And Ginger does in fact snap.
Yeah, she snaps. Yep, it kind of works on multiple levels.
Yeah, it's a real thinker.
Yeah. But yes, Ginger Snaps, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it came out in 2000. It's a Canadian supernatural horror film.
Yeah.
It was directed by John Fawcett, and it was written by Karen Walton. It was based on a story that the two of them worked on together.
Mm-hmm.
It is, of course, about werewolves and puberty and sisterhood and drugs.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, womanhood.
Yeah.
And like family.
Yeah, that's why I said sisterhood, and then you just said it in more words.
And traveling. And fashion. A lot like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
Yeah, actually nothing like that at all.
No, it's just like that, but with more werewolves. Full disclosure, I've never seen Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
I was sensing that.
So I could be off base, but I feel like it's basically, if you've seen that, you've seen Ginger Snaps.
No. Let me go over the cast with you, because they really popped off with this one. We've got Emily Perkins as Bridget Fitzgerald, one of the sisters. We have Catherine Isabel as Ginger Fitzgerald. We have local drug dealer bad boy Sam, played by Chris Lemke?
No idea.
Not sure. We have the Fitzgerald sisters' mom, Pamela, played by Mimi Rogers. We have fuckboy that nobody likes because he's mean, Jason McCarty, played by Jesse Moss. And then we also have the, like, I guess kind of like popular girl who's sort of their rival in some ways, Trina. Yeah. And that she's played by Danielle Hampton. Mm-hmm. This movie is interesting because I was looking at the Wikipedia page to get the cast list because I always copy it into my notes. Yeah. And I saw a little bit of trivia on there that said that I guess originally the offer for the role of Bridget was sent to a young Scarlett Johansson. But her mom didn't want her to do the movie because it was like controversial at the time, because they were doing like the casting and filming and everything in 1999, which is when Columbine happened, and like some other school shootings. And there was kind of this whole like moral panic about like teen violence, and feeling like this was like adding to that in some way.
That starts to get into the whole,
the
video games are making our children violent. Yes. And it's like, they're not.
They're not, though. But that was very much a thing, like, that was happening, a moment in time where everyone was all panicked about media and, like, killer kids and blah, blah, blah. And so I guess this movie was kind of controversial, which, I mean, that's interesting that Scarlett Johansson's manager and or mom didn't want her to do it for that reason. Who knows what her career might have turned out like if she had.
I think that's very interesting because, like, we just did Eight-Legged Freaks,
Mm-hmm.
and she was in that.
Yeah.
And there's, I think, like, an interesting trajectory where Scarlett Johansson is in an alternate universe is a scream queen.
Scream queen, yeah. Which I would love.
Because I don't think there's a world where she becomes an actor but doesn't become wildly successful. She's just very good as an actress. And so, like, I think if she had stuck with horror, like, we definitely would be seeing her in whatever the 2018 Halloween movie.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
She's great.
I think it is one of my favorite things when you watch old horror movies, seeing now famous actors and actresses that you recognize from other things and you don't associate them with horror in them, and then thinking, man, I wish they had kept doing that. And I think more prominent actors and actresses should do horror movies. Yeah. I think it would actually mean, like, more money goes into making them, and we might actually see better ones than what Blumhouse is putting out now.
Yeah, not to name drop, but I
hate Blumhouse. I'll name drop it. They ruined fucking everything.
Yeah, I feel like more, especially like very successful actors who are really established in their career. Yeah, more people need to like Nick Cage it, where they just start getting freaky with it.
That's what I'm saying. They need to just get weird with it. You know, like it's Attack of the Killer Tomatoes 2, I think, and maybe that's Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes.
I think it might be.
One of those two movies is like a super young, just getting into acting George Clooney. Yep. A name that you would not associate with like B horror stuff. And I think what's also interesting is, like, if you look at horror movies today, it's not always the case, because we do get like Florence Pugh and Toni Collette, and those are like established names. Like, people know who those people are. But who knows the actors or actresses that are starring in these things that, like, these are going to be like weird B movies, like Imaginary, right? Like that movie was kind of trash, but who knows if in like 50 years people will be watching Imaginary and being like, oh my God, yeah, the little girl in that one is actually,
she won an Oscar.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I always think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool too.
It's like unearthing a little treasure.
Yeah. Another thing that I thought was really interesting, and I don't think this wasn't like went into their decision or anything. It was just pure happenstance. But the two actresses who played the sisters, it was like a weird coincidence that they both were like born in the same hospital, went to the same preschool and like elementary school, and all these weird like ways that their paths crossed, but they didn't know each other, which was kind of fun. It felt like
collided
fate
to make this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fun. They had really good chemistry.
Yes.
In the movie.
Yeah.
I loved Emily Perkins's portrayal of Bridget. Yeah. They nailed the nerdy kind of,
the weird, morbid,
shut-in kind of girl, like archetype, where there's these scenes where they're at this school and like Bridget's got on like a cardigan and then like a sweater underneath that and then some kind of shirt underneath that, and it's like all the way up their neck, and then one of those skirts that comes down over her knees, but then like tights. Really high like tights and socks or whatever. So like you can't like there's nothing being shown off, juxtaposed to Ginger, who's kind of wearing like just like a black, jacket or whatever, like one of the cool girls on it. And it's just, I don't know, the archetype that they hit in this was great. I really liked it.
It was very good. So Ginger Snaps, kind of the hook of the movie is that two morbid teenage sisters have their relationship tested when Ginger, who has started her period for the first time, is attacked and bitten by an unknown animal, and then slowly starts to transform into a werewolf. So it is very much, it's not even subtext, it's text.
No,
that, like, this is about puberty
and
adolescence.
Yeah. There are scenes where, like, after she is attacked by the werewolf, and she's going through these changes of turning into the werewolf where she's, like, bleeding.
Yes. And like, her back hurts and she has cramps.
She ends up going to, like, the school nurse, and the nurse is like,
it's all normal.
Yeah, this is all normal. And so it is very much just, they're just saying what it is in this movie. And I think it is really fun how they managed to do so many kind of, like, double entendres and stuff in there where, like, they're talking about, she's very much like, I'm turning into a werewolf, but literally everyone around her is just like, you're a woman now. That's periods for you.
Yeah. So that's super fun. One of my favorite lines in the movie or one of interactions rather, is when Ginger first realizes that she got her period, and she says, she, like, looks at Bridget and she's like, I just got the curse. And Bridget just so deadpan goes, ew. It's delighted me.
It's very good. I love their, like, interactions with each other. I was just like, yeah, these are sisters. It's great.
Yes. And they have really, they're extremely unhinged. They're both, morbid is the perfect word for them. They're, like, obsessed with death. Yeah.
The intro to these characters is at the beginning of the movie, there's, like, a kid playing in, like, a sandbox, and he, like, reaches up and touches his face, and, like, a little bit of red gets on him, and you're like, what's that? The mom comes over and she's like, what are you playing with? And then she picks it up, and it's the severed paw from, like, their dog.
Yeah.
And then she goes and looks over where the dog house is, and then, like, the dog's, like, torn in half, and there's like guts all over.
Really gross.
It's really gross. But she's, like, runs out into her front yard and is, like, screaming about their dog being dead. And there's, like, a bunch of kids playing, like, hockey in the cul-de-sac or whatever. And Bridget is just standing, I guess, like, at the front of her house and seeing this. And then she comes in to talk with Ginger, and they immediately start talking about killing themselves.
Yes. They have this whole, like, death pact.
Yeah.
They say dead on the scene or out by 16, but together forever, basically meaning they want to move away by the time they're both 16, or they're going to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And they have all of this, like, very morbid conversation about how, like, suicide is the ultimate fuck you, and, like, it's this big, like, expression of the self and all this stuff. And they're doing an art project where they are photographing themselves in these increasingly elaborate
and disturbing staged
suicides, basically. So they're like, they have ones where it looks like they're hanging, and there's ones where Ginger's been impaled on a picket fence, and, you know, all this stuff. And it's very just, like, normal to them, and they don't see anything weird about it, you know?
Yeah. And then, you know, when they turn this into the class, like, the next day or whatever, the teacher is all like, this is horrifying.
Yeah. Come see me after class. But we very much get the point right away that Ginger and Bridget are social outcasts, but that's kind of how they like it. I think there's a certain level of priding themselves on, like, being different from other people, and not conforming or, you know, whatever. Like, especially when we first see them, they both dress in a pretty, like, very modest, like...
Yeah, it's like a modest but, like, kind of gothy
it's
twist
sort of
on
goth, but it's, like, tons of layers. You can't see any, like, any shape in their body or anything like that.
Yeah, like how I was describing with Bridget earlier, like, Ginger similarly is wearing kind of baggy clothing, so you can't really, like, there's nothing like really sexualized about either one of them.
No, they're kind of sexualized.
Yeah.
Like, there's actually a point pretty early on when the character of Jason, who's kind of this, you know,
Yeah.
like I said earlier, he's this fuckboy of the school. He like catcalls Bridget or something.
Yeah.
And she's wearing like a big heavy cardigan, but she had pushed it like back so you could see her torso, like it wasn't like tight around her. And she just like doesn't even respond to him, but just immediately like covers herself more tightly with the cardigan. And so I think it's very much like they are not interested in boys.
Yeah.
They're not interested in being popular. They just have each other, you know. They're weird girls.
Yeah, they're very weird girls. This movie had a lot of really funny scenes in it.
Yes.
Just kind of like, not even like, I think the intentionally funny scenes. Like there are some that are intentionally funny and they land. But then there are other ones that are kind of like absurd and like, how would this work this way?
Right.
That scene we were talking about where they're like on the field and they're being like catcalled and all of this stuff. They're also like smoking a cigarette, but like everyone's playing, I guess, like field hockey or whatever around them while this is happening. They're just like standing there.
They're not even like hidden under the bleachers. No. They're literally just in the open, the field with the coach. And it's like, okay, I know that there was once a time when there was like a smoking section at school. Pretty sure this
wasn't
didn't
in
fly.
Like the late 90s, early 2000s.
And also, even back then, they had like a smoking section. You weren't allowed to just be like, let me take a smoke break in the middle of this game.
There was that. There was a really, I found this to be very funny moment where they're sitting around their dinner table and their mom is trying to be like really supportive and wants to like,
she's like trying too hard to bond with them and connect with them.
And Ginger is complaining about her back hurting. And I believe this is after she's been attacked by the werewolf. And the mom is like, why is your back hurting? Is it? And she's trying to like get to the like, oh my God, are you actually having your period finally? Right. The husband, I can't remember his name. It's like Jim or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't even write it down.
It doesn't matter. But he, like, when they start talking about this, they're all just eating. He stops eating and he was like, we're trying to eat dinner. Like, why are we having this discussion? And then in the same conversation, I think Bridget starts talking about some of this morbid stuff with like, you know, people being dead or like, you know, killing themselves again or whatever. And he's silent. He says nothing about this.
That's fine.
It was one of the funniest moments for me because I was like, oh, they're really just like, they're really trying to drive home this whole like, oh, it's disgusting, you know, but like it isn't. Like it is just a natural, normal thing.
I think that was something I found kind of interesting about the werewolf allegory for this is that as Ginger begins to change, not only is she becoming like more monstrous, but she's also becoming like more feminine and confident and like desirable. So she kind of goes into this mode of like, she's interested in boys all of a sudden and she's like trying to hook up and make out and, you know, wearing tight clothing and like being flirtatious and enjoying the attention. But at the same time as that, she's also literally growing a tail that she has to like tape to her leg so that people don't know that that's happening to her.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is an interesting way to depict kind of the mix of emotions that young teen girls go through of simultaneously like everyone's sending you these messages of like, oh, you're a woman now, which seems like it's this big important thing, but then also like, this is gross, this is stressful, this is annoying, I don't want to deal with this all the time. You know, I'm in the bathroom trying to figure out how to put a tampon in. Like, it's not cute and fun, even though people kind of present it that way sometimes. But yeah, I think it's a perfect vehicle to talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in this movie that I think they do to kind of illustrate those two kind of viewpoints of it. Neither, and they're both kind of like extremes, right?
Yes,
like, and there's not really a point in the movie where anybody's like, this is normal, except for like the nurse and the mom when they just think that it is like a period.
Right. And they don't know about the werewolf.
Yeah, they don't know about the werewolf thing. And so like you can see the adults kind of treating this as like a normal thing that you would be going through. But then everyone around their age is like either this is gross or they're, I mean, even as the movie goes on and Ginger becomes more like feminine and like outwardly confident and everything, you can see all of the men that she interacts with or even just walks by, she's getting more attention just as this goes on. Whereas like a pretty stark contrast from the beginning of the movie where they were so invisible that they were able to stand in the middle of a field and smoke a cigarette and nobody
paid attention.
Nobody paid attention to it other than the McCarty dude, whatever.
Yeah, Jason.
How did that guy fucking make it out of this movie, by the way?
I don't know. He left
like,
out.
He's like the one guy that I was like, really?
Yeah. But it's it's really interesting how they toy with that aspect. There's also a lot of discussion in this movie about like the relationships between women and like sisters in particular, because Bridget and Ginger kind of go on this journey where they start out honestly like kind of unhealthily codependent.
Yes.
And it seems kind of sweet at first because you're like, oh, they're sisters and they're best friends. But you're also like, this isn't right. You know, like they are almost like intentionally isolating themselves from anyone else and just living in their own little bubble.
Well, and I think like where you really start to see some of that unhealthy dynamic come in is, I mean, certainly towards the later part of the movie, but certainly as Ginger's progressing through becoming a werewolf, she starts getting these like attitude swings.
Yes.
Where she like wants to be protective of Bridget, but then also is mad whenever Bridget does anything that would like pull her away from Ginger.
Yeah.
Right? And so then it starts to come across as Ginger's actually kind of being controlling of Bridget and not allowing Bridget to like, because I think Bridget is just kind of a weird girl and morbid and everything, so she would be into that stuff regardless. But like, I think there's also a discussion around like, maybe Bridget would fit in more.
Yeah.
But Ginger doesn't allow that to happen because Ginger desperately want to have this person that's always going to be with them.
Right.
Almost every time that saying that they have comes up, Ginger's the one saying it.
She initiates it. Yeah. And it's, you definitely see that fall apart. Like initially Bridget is concerned about her becoming a werewolf and Ginger's kind of in denial. Like she knows that she got attacked and she knows that it mysteriously healed really quickly, but she's not willing to like face it yet. So she's kind of just looking at all these personality changes and things as, well, I'm just going through changes. You know, I'm different now. But, you know, it's like Bridget says at one point, she's like, you're doing drugs with boys. Something's definitely wrong with you. Yeah. And it's like, that's the perfect example because like that's something that they never would have done before. And so Bridget's trying to say, hey, this isn't just the fact that you're going through puberty. You're literally becoming a monster. Yeah.
It's an entirely separate thing.
Yeah, it's a whole other issue.
But also, maybe you are all like dealing with having your period now.
I don't know. But it's really interesting to kind of see because at first, Ginger sort of pulls away from Bridget.
Yeah.
And Bridget's kind of desperately trying to hold on to her.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the opposite where Ginger starts to really rely on Bridget as things escalate to a point where it's like really outside of her control. And Bridget is coming into her own and trying to solve this problem in her own way.
Yep. And
Ginger doesn't like that. Ginger doesn't like that Bridget has people that she's friends with that Ginger doesn't know.
Yeah.
Or that, you know, she is going off and studying this werewolf stuff and coming back with suggestions. Like she feels like Bridget is mine, you know? So
yeah, the it's really, really interesting because the more Bridget does to ultimately try to help Ginger.
Yes.
The more independent she becomes, because she kind of has to do this. And then Ginger picks up on this and thinks, oh, she's going to leave.
Yes.
And she's mine.
Yes.
Nobody else can be friends with her or whatever. We had this pact.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But then there's also this like thing towards the end where Ginger is also saying like, you always wanted to be like me, where she's like kind of blaming Bridget for like always like never finding her own thing kind of a thing. And so it's very like gaslighty.
You can tell they have an unhealthy dynamic.
That's the thing. It's like it's not even like it's not a flaw in the movie or like a plot hole or anything.
No.
It's just it really illustrates that like their
complicated
dynamic is really unhealthy.
Yeah.
It just seems at the beginning that they're just two weird girls hanging out and having fun.
Yeah.
But like literally anything past the surface, you're like, oh no, this is bad.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because you don't really know, like, we don't have an objective point of view for the movie because you know, as the saying goes, like there's three sides to every story. There's your side, my side, and the truth. And I think that's kind of the thing with this movie, is that they both have their interpretation as to why they've ended up the way they are and why they feel the way that they do.
Sure.
The reality is probably somewhere closer to the center.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because as Ginger is saying, you know, you like, I have to do everything for you and you like cling on to me. Bridget is also responding and saying, you literally destroy anything I have that isn't about you.
Yep.
And so it's like they're both kind of right in a way,
Yeah,
you know? But yeah, so that's definitely a whole element of this too, is just their relationship and dynamic as sisters and kind of different sides of like femininity in a way, and how you like different people relate and respond to womanhood. Yeah, it's also just like a really fun horror movie. Like I know we've just talked a lot about the interpersonal stuff.
No. But I think that's actually a really good hallmark of like a good horror movie. Like horror movies, horror in general is queer, and horror usually is having good horror movies are usually like there's subtext there. In this case, it's just text, but whatever. Yes. So like there's a metaphor for like some other thing, and it's, you know, there was I think a trend in like the 2010s or whatever to make like every horror movie about depression, and that was actually the thing. And sometimes it works better than others. We talked about it in Sinister with like the big thing actually being like alcoholism and addiction, right? Like
and the
that's
Babadook,
what it is.
It's grief.
Yeah.
And
so like it's these emotions or whatever. And so like I think some of them are more successful than others in portraying that. Not to say that either of those is unsuccessful.
Oh no, they're both great movies.
But I do think that like it being about this and then having it be a werewolf movie as the vehicle to do that is just a really creative way to go about doing that. But like it's a really nice bonus that it's like a fun werewolf movie. Yeah. This is a pretty iconic werewolf
also just like
story.
Crazy practical effects and blood and guts and weird stuff. Like there's also just heads up for anyone. There are a lot of dead dogs in this movie. Like, a lot.
This is one of those ones where it's like pets on screen are not safe.
No. And it's because, like, there's sort of the framing of this at the very beginning. People are murmuring about, oh, anytime someone leaves their dog out, it gets killed.
Yeah, there's some, like, wild animal wandering around killing
and they're
animals.
calling it the Beast of Bailey Downs, which is the town that they live in. Yeah. They don't know that it's a werewolf, obviously, at that point, but we come to learn that. Yeah. But truly, like, if you're a dog and you live in Bailey Downs,
count your days.
Count your days, because it's
you're
over for you.
They also do, like, it's a really good werewolf movie. It's also kind of inventive because they don't just subscribe to like silver will kill it. They do a plan where using this silver ring they give Ginger
a belly button
ring made of silver, and it doesn't help.
No.
It does nothing.
Absolutely nothing
for that. And Bridget does this like montage of like watching werewolf movies and like reading books about werewolves to like try to study up.
And she's made friends with Sam, who's like the local drug dealer, and he's also like weirdly interested in lycanthropes. And
he like operates a greenhouse and does like landscaping as a business, but he also sells drugs. He's
a drug dealer. He gives vibes. I don't know exactly how old he was supposed to be, but he gives vibes of like the 19 or 20-year-old that still hangs out with the high schoolers.
He graduated high school, did not go to college because he had like money, or like it's a family business thing or something like that, or he just had enough money from selling drugs or whatever, and he never left town. He's always hanging around the high school or
trying
just different spots in town and selling marijuana to people.
But anyway, she kind of links up with him because he, on the night that Ginger gets attacked, he happens to be driving by, and he actually runs over the werewolf that attacked Ginger. And he doesn't quite know the whole situation either, but he's immediately like, that wasn't
just a dog.
Right. Like, that's not a dog. That's not a bear. That's nothing I've ever seen before. So he's kind of also invested in figuring this out. So they work together. They have kind of an interesting dynamic. I mean, they definitely leave it open to interpretation. I think at times it's implied that maybe there's romantic undertones to their relationship, but I don't necessarily read it that way.
The way that I interpreted it was that, like, Bridget, might be somewhat infatuated with him because he's, like, helping, and he's an older guy, he's kind of cool or whatever. And, you know, whatever, they're hanging out, so there's this closeness, and they're working on this problem together. Plus, the framing of him helping Bridget is that he, at least at the beginning, thinks that Bridget is the one that is turning into a werewolf, and Bridget also tells him that this is what is happening, to kind of cover for Ginger, and everything. And so there's this kind of like vulnerability that is there because she's having to discuss something that is personal, even though it's not actually her, but he doesn't know that at the beginning. But anyway, I kind of interpret it as like maybe there are romantic feelings from her, but there's a scene towards the end, or maybe not quite the end of the movie, where Ginger and Bridget are visiting him, and Ginger says something to both of them and then leaves, and it's very snarky and mean and whatever, and he turns to Bridget and says, "I don't think of you that way." And to me that sounds very genuine and sincere, the way he delivers that. That, like, I don't get the vibes that he's kind of a creepy weirdo. That's because Bridget's supposed to be 15 in this movie, and that would be fucked up. So.
Well, and that's what Ginger is implying, because again, part of this is Ginger is becoming like hypersexual as she's going through this transformation. So she hooks up with Jason, she's like doing all this stuff, and it kind of seems like she has this read on Sam and Bridget's dynamic of like, ever since she started having sex, she kind of believes that that's all men are gonna want. You know, so she's looking at their dynamic, and she's like, well, the only reason that he would be hanging out with her is because he wants to get in her pants. So she's very upfront about that, and again, very protective of Bridget, which is not necessarily like unfounded, but in this particular case, you know, that was not what was going on.
Well, and I think it also, again, serves to the idea that, like, anything that Bridget might be reaching out to do on her own, romantic or otherwise, it
even
doesn't
if
matter.
It was just her friend,
truly just a friend. Ginger tries to destroy this because it means that in some way Bridget is becoming independent, and we cannot have that.
Nope.
But yeah, no, they play with like werewolf rules in this movie. So like we said, Silver doesn't seem to work on them. Sam hits the werewolf in the beginning with his truck, and that just kills it.
Seems to fully kill it. Yeah, we never hear about that again. So.
And they do talk about Wolfsbane, the flower, and then they end up going to Monkshood, which is like a relative of the same kind of flower or a different name for it. I don't know, whatever. But they're like, where are we gonna get that? Because it's out of season. It's coming up. I guess they're in October right now at the time of the movie, and they're like, we don't have that.
Yeah.
And like while he could start growing it, it would take a while for any meaningful
right, it's not
amount
just
of
gonna
it.
pop up overnight.
Yeah, and so Bridget ends up getting some from her mother because she picked it up at a craft store, and there's just dried.
Yeah, she's just
monkshood.
making dried flower arrangements or something.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But,
sounds like something moms would be doing.
Yeah, but so she gets it, and then this is where I think you and I both were like, so Sam's definitely into like hardcore drugs. Because they cook up this thing where they like grind up the petals and then get some isopropyl alcohol,
Yep.
and then like heat it
They
over
prep
a
it like
light.
heroin.
Yeah, he preps it like
Yeah.
heroin with like a needle and everything. And I'm like, so this man just has hypodermic needles laying around? Absolutely not. That dude's doing heroin on the side.
Hardcore drugs. Yeah.
So,
but
yeah.
they're able to make this, injection of this monkshood extract or whatever. They only have one vial at first. Bridget knows that there's more back at home, but they just did like the one branch or whatever you would call it. So they want to experiment with this. They think that it's possibly going to work. And at the time that they are making this cure, things have really escalated with Ginger, where like we kind of have this slow thing where it starts as just personality changes, and then she does start becoming violent, but she kills like neighborhood dogs. And then Trina comes over because she thinks that Ginger killed her dog, and then Ginger kind of kills her in an accidental way.
Yeah, she like drags her inside, and there's this whole thing where, because like earlier in the movie where they were on the field, they were doing this like joking around thing where they were talking about like Bridget was like picking out somebody and then describing how they would die, or like how they would be killed or something like that. And Ginger in this moment calls back to that scene and being like, this is what you wanted. And then there's a moment where Trina starts like throwing up. And so Ginger lets her go, and then Trina goes to grab a knife, but when she does, there was like milk that was out or something.
Yeah, she slips.
And she slips in the milk, and this to me was like the most horrifying moment of this entire movie. I literally gasped. And I don't typically, you can attest to this when we watch movies, things don't typically get me. This got me because I did not see it coming at all, and I was like, oh shit. Mostly because I think it's like incredibly realistic that this could just happen to somebody. She slips in the milk, and when she does, she goes backwards and she hits her head on the corner of like the counter or something like that, and she's done. She's instantly dead. The blood's mixing with the milk on the floor.
It's awful.
It's gross. But yeah, this leads to some pretty humorous scenes because they have to like hide the body. They have to
hide it.
It's so good.
It's so fun too because they've already established this thing where they take photos of like fake deaths and stuff.
Yeah.
So their parents are coming home as Trina is bleeding out on the ground, and there's this like moment of panic. And then we see things from the parents' perspective, and they come in. They've managed to move Trina, and Ginger is now laying in the blood and like eating it and stuff and being like, oh, we were just taking more photos.
Yeah, we just got a camera.
It's just corn syrup. Do you want to taste? And it was really fun. And it also just like moments like that really start to show how Ginger is like losing herself and truly becoming a monster because she's so like laissez-faire about this, does not care that this person died. They go and bury her in the backyard, and there's like kind of this tense interaction where Bridget is like mad at Ginger now. She's fully just like, you are not my sister basically anymore. And they have this interaction of like, oh, if I wasn't here, would you be eating her right now? And, like there's just a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Things really escalate. She kills Trina. She kills the guidance counselor. She kills the janitor. There's a terrifying sequence at the school where she's killing the janitor and like, mocking Bridget and stuff. It's just awful. So this is when Bridget's really at a point of like, I have to cure her or else.
Yeah.
In
the background. So like when they kill Trina accidentally, but then they decide they're going to cover this up. They put her body in this like chest freezer that there's in the garage. One very small gripe I have with it is like her body's like instantly frozen, and
yeah,
I'm like,
she's fully
straight up wouldn't happen.
icy.
But whatever.
Yeah.
And later that night they go get her out of the freezer so they can go bury her. And when they're going to do this, Bridget has like a trowel or knife or something like that, and she's like picking at her to like get her unstuck from the freezer, and she breaks off a couple of her fingers, and then they're dragging her to, I guess, the shed in the backyard, and they're gonna bury her underneath the shed because there's just a dirt floor inside of it.
Sure.
Whatever. As they're going to do that, they drop the fingers in the yard, and later the dad and the mom are like doing some yard work or whatever, and he finds the fingers, and the mom comes over and she's like, "Oh, what are you worried about? They're fake
fingers.
You know,
yeah.
part of the girl's death project." And she takes them and puts them in this like Tupperware and then sticks them in the freezer. And she turns away from it, and she has this really concerned look on her face.
She suspects
something's up, especially after finding them like goofing around with the death project in the kitchen with the blood and everything, and now there's fingers. Like very shortly after,
Ginger is acting even like more
really
strange
weird.
than usual.
It ends up leading to like a really, really funny moment where the mom ends up going into the shed, digging up, and she finds the body and realizes what happens. And then she's driving around and she finds Bridget, and I can't remember what Bridget is like, why she's just like running. Or if she's on the street, it doesn't matter. She's like heading in one direction or the other. I think she's going to visit Sam or something to get more stuff, because she had to use the one that she had on McCarty. Yeah. Whatever. He gets turned into a werewolf, but she cures him.
Because he had unprotected sex with Ginger.
Yeah.
So apparently the werewolfitis is also
an STD.
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
There's a lot of layers.
We don't have time to get into it.
Just watch the movie.
Watch the movie. All right. Anyway, but so the mom sees her and like pulls up alongside of her and is like, "Where's your sister?" And she said, she's like, "I'm going to find her," whatever. And she gets her into the car, and then she explains, she's like, "You guys did a terrible thing, but they're not going to take my babies away from me."
Pam is immediately...
We're gonna get your sister. We're gonna go back to the house. We're gonna leave the gas on.
We're gonna burn the house
basically
down.
Gonna blow the house up.
Yeah.
And us three will leave. We'll leave your father behind. And I was like,
and
oh
create
my
a new
God.
life. It's so funny.
It's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, ultimately this leads to a big like climactic thing with Bridget, Sam, and Ginger back at the house. Ginger has become a full-fledged werewolf at this point.
They try to get her home because that's where the extra monk's hood is, and they need that to make the what they think is the cure.
Yeah.
And so we get kind of a cat and mouse scene of where Ginger running around the house and Bridget and Sam hiding from her, and eventually Sam does get got.
Yeah, he gets got.
Yeah.
They did a really fun thing because Ginger was like growing to the point of like changing so much that it was almost dangerous for Bridget to be around her. So in order to like convince her that I'm cool with you being a werewolf and I'm going to join you and follow you just like I do with everything, Bridget cuts her hand
and infects
herself with the werewolf disease. And then that seems to kind of satiate Ginger for the moment. She ends up getting knocked out by Sam because Sam doesn't understand what's going on because Bridget didn't have time to explain anything like that. There's a scene where they're back at the house and they're trying to make the monk's hood, and Ginger has gotten out of the back of the van. She's woken up. She's become a full werewolf. She's inside the house tearing it up. And they end up diving inside of this pantry and they're like cooking up a new batch of this stuff. And as they're doing this, you don't hear anything, but Bridget stops and goes, "Did you hear that?" And like, because there's no sound or anything that plays for like the audience, nothing. He doesn't hear anything like that. But then when they finish, he goes to open the door, creaks the door open, and then like as soon as he starts the move, he just gets yanked out and just violently thrown around and like
yeeted into the next dimension. Yeah, there's so much blood.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Bridget kind of follows in pursuit because at this point she's the only option. She's got the vial. She's got to do it. Sam is close to death. And Ginger eventually finishes him off when Bridget kind of stands up to Ginger and says, like, I'm not gonna do this with you.
Yeah.
Then she kills Sam, and then they have a final chase around the basement, and Bridget is like letting out all of her frustrations at Ginger, and they're having this, you know, full confrontation. And I think something that was really powerful in like the full circle moment for Bridget in particular is that at the beginning of the movie, the first time we're in their bedroom is them talking about killing themselves. And then Bridget literally says to the werewolf Ginger, I'm not going to die in this room with you. Yep. And it's like, hell yeah, bitch. Yep. Yeah. Like, be your own person. Live your life.
And so she ends up stabbing Ginger. And
it was kind of an accident, but yeah.
Yeah. She didn't, like, mean to do it necessarily. She's just trying to hold her off. Yeah. Because I think she did want to cure her. Yes. But it just didn't work out that way. Yeah. And she ends up stabbing her. And then Ginger dies. Ginger bleeds out while Bridget holds her and cries. Yep. It's actually a very sad ending. Very bleak. It's a pretty bleak ending. And that's it. We don't really get any resolution about like Trina has disappeared. The school's been looking into this, you know, and so that's up in the air. They left a terrible mess at the school with the janitor, lots of murder, and the guidance counselor and all of this stuff. So like things are kind of closing in. So like who knows what that's going to look like. There is a Ginger Snaps 2 and 3, which is a prequel. So 2, you know, picks up sometime after that. So I guess we would have to watch that to see what happens. I certainly don't know. It's also it is interesting. It's one of those like movie sequels that like people generally regard as pretty good. I don't know about the third one. The third one is like... I don't really hear people talk about the third one, but people like the second one. Yeah, but people really like the second one, so... Anyway, this was a really good movie. Love this movie. We should rate it. Yes. And while we're pulling our ratings up, if you're a Jennifer's Body fan, you'll like this movie. Just gonna say that right now. That's fair, yeah. I think I agree with that. Okay, so for this movie... That one scene we can talk about scariest moments if you want. With this, that one scene where Trina falls backwards and hits her head. Yeah, scariest scene of the whole movie for me. Fucking terrifying. Fair enough. Because that's real. Yeah, I slipped in the shower one time and hit my head. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and like. Awful. You know, I was like, oh, I could have a concussion. Yeah. You know, or if I'd like had been like a couple of inches to the left or whatever, would have hit the sink and like fucking probably died. I don't know. So like, it's real. And like, that's kind of crazy. So like, that scared me. The rest of it is kind of like there's blood and guts and that's kind of gross. I think that's more of like a visuals thing for me than it is like actually scary. But I rated this movie, the lowest thing I gave it was a 7. Everything else was 7.5 except entertainment, which I put at an 8.5, bringing my average to 7.6. And I rated it, my highest score was actually a 9, and my lowest was a 6.5, so I had a little bit more of a spread than you did, but I ultimately came out to a 7.7. Yeah. So we were right there next to each other. Yeah. Mine was slightly higher than yours. You found it slightly more entertaining than me, and then slightly less scary than I did. Yeah. Is kind of how this that breakdown works out. I don't find it to be particularly scary personally. I think, honestly, the scarier stuff about it is the real life stuff that it's talking about. Yeah, the existential, like, you know, the men being kind of shitty. Like, there's this whole thing where, like, the men are, the boys, I should say, are sitting on the bleachers as the girls are all playing like field hockey during whatever PE or something, and they're just sitting there being like, yeah, turn around for me, and nobody's saying anything. Yeah. And I'm like, I know it was a different time, but like, come on. Or like, maybe this is my scariest moment, just because again, it's like real. But after they accidentally killed Trina, Bridget is freaking out because she's like, gonna go to jail for the rest of my life, all this stuff. Ginger, still in her werewolfness, is very like whatever about it. And Ginger has this she's trying to calm Bridget down by saying, listen, no one's ever gonna think that 2 teenage girls did this.
because a girl can only be a slut, a bitch, a tease, or the virgin next door. We just have to coast, basically. And that is so, like, wild.
Yeah.
And such a real, like, moment that I feel like every teen girl goes through of just, like, so there's only a few things I can be, and none of them are, like, just a full person.
Yeah.
I love this movie from that perspective.
Yeah, no, it's a really good, really fun movie. If you like werewolf stuff and you haven't seen this, but go watch it.
Go watch. If you like women.
If you like women, just go watch this movie. It's a fun movie for that.
If you like women, what they do, what they're about, check it out.
Their whole thing.
Yeah, their whole
whatever
vibe.
they got going on.
So our combined average was a 7.7.
Yeah.
So I actually don't know what our highest rating so far is. We have been talking about putting together like a spreadsheet to keep track of it.
Yeah, I need to go back and do that.
But I would be curious to see, because I think this is one of the ones that at least I personally have rated higher.
I think this is one of our higher rated ones. I don't know if it's the highest. It might be, but it's going to be up there.
Yeah.
Because I think we might have rated like Saw really high.
Maybe 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10s across the board.
I think back when we did Saw, we were still using our old
Yeah, but
method.
we could convert it.
I did also just want to say, because a huge part of the reason we even picked this movie to do right now is that part of the climax happens at a Halloween party.
Oh, yeah, because
this is a Halloween movie.
It is a Halloween movie. If you're looking specifically for movies that like have to do with Halloween, this is one of them.
Yes, there's all this lead up. It's in October. There's a big costume party
towards
and
the climax when they're having the greenhouse bash or whatever, where all the teens go to get drunk at whatever. Ginger shows up and she is like basically half werewolf at this point. One of her eyes is like looks all weird, and her facial structure is like starting to change. She's
starting to look sort of canine.
Yeah, and she kind of looks like one of those like quote unquote slutty Halloween costumes of like, I'm a werewolf, but also I'm a lady.
It's kind of giving the way that Buffy the Vampire Slayer does vampires. Kind of has that vibe.
I think, that's a really good way to put it. But she walks in, and the reason nobody even thinks this is weird is because it's a Halloween party. So they just think it's a cool costume.
Yeah.
I think somebody even tells her cool costume.
Yeah, love your costume. Yep. Anyway. So it is a Halloween movie. If you want something to add to your watch list for October, we are readily approaching Halloween quickly, rapidly approaching Halloween. Yeah. Speaking of, as a reminder, we are going to be doing our first ever live show.
Yeah, just to kind of go over it again as we get closer and closer. I think we have one other episode coming out before the live show actually takes place. But we are doing a live show. We're watching a movie screening, and then we're going to do a live episode recording after that. We're doing that at Athentic Brewing Company here in Athens, Georgia. It's going to be at 7 p.m. So show up.
Yep. It's free.
Yeah, it is free.
There's no admission. You get to watch the movie and then listen to us, and you can, buy some beers or something. Yeah. Definitely check that out. We'll be putting up reminders as we continue to get closer.
There'll be some stuff in the description of the episode. Yeah. There'll be a link to the event. I think we have a Facebook event. Also, if you go to Visit Athens website, we're listed on there as an event that's coming up. So you can find it. I'll put all those links in the description. We'll hook you up
with it.
Anyway.
And if you struggle to find anything, you can always email us. It's firstrightpod@gmail.com. We're also on social media. We are on X and Instagram at firstrightpod. And then finally, we also do have a Facebook page. It's just the name of the podcast, Love It First Right. So feel free to check us out there. We will be keeping you posted, and we hope to see some of you all.
Yeah, no, it'd be really cool to see people turn out for this. I'm really looking forward to it.
We may or may not have stickers.
Oh, yeah. We may or may not have splurged on some cool, extremely limited stickers. Yeah. We're getting to that stage now where, like, we can, like, kind of get some merch stuff. Yeah. But, like, it feels really exclusive.
Yes.
So like, I don't know that we're ever gonna make these again.
Probably not.
So, show up and you'll get a sticker. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Probably.
I'm not guaranteeing you'll get a sticker.
Unless there's more than 69 people that want a sticker, then you won't get that.
But yeah. Also, send us recommendations for stuff that you want to hear us talk about. We're constantly updating our list of movies that we have. I have like a note app on my phone that I have a list going. There's a board that we keep, a whiteboard. This movie actually let me scratch off another thing off of my horror movie poster. So yeah, whatever you have. If you have recommendations, send them in. I love doing viewer recommendations. Anyway, I think that's all I got.
That's all I got too.
As always. Okay. As always. No. As always, care well and see you next time.
Aru.
There you go. That's it.